Miami Beach, July 2003, 3:47 a.m. The oceanfront road is strangely quiet, almost too quiet. A black SUV glides through with no sirens, no lights, just tires whispering over salt-damp pavement. 4 men in body armor pull up to a cheap motel off Collins Avenue. Room 212. Inside, Albert is 22, hunched over a laptop, eyes burned red from staying up all night. 3 cell phones sit on the bed next to a couple of Red Bull cans and a bag of Doritos, like the leftovers of a life nobody sees. Then the door blows in. Albert snaps upright, bolts for the bathroom. He makes it maybe 2 steps. 2 agents slam him into the carpet. Cold cuffs bite down on his wrists. He doesn't scream. He doesn't fight. He just lies there, breathing hard. Because Albert knows something they don't. In his head, it's all there. Logins, passwords, server locations, an entire hidden marketplace running under the surface of everyday America. Information that can buy time. Information that can buy protection. And in that moment, Albert convinces himself he's not just caught. He's about to become untouchable. 12 years earlier, Miami, 1991. A Cuban-American family in a small house in a small neighborhood, the kind of place where adults leave early, get home late, and everything gets measured in hard work. Albert's dad grinds all day. His mom keeps the house spotless, doing what parents do when they just want their kid to grow up normal. Stay out of trouble. Do okay in school. Build a steady life. But Albert isn't like other kids. For his 10th birthday, his parents get him a computer, a plain beige box, nothing fancy. For most kids, it's a toy. For Albert, it's a mystery. He pops the case open like it's a watch, starts pulling it apart screw by screw, laying the pieces out on his bedroom floor. His mom freaks out, tells him he broke it. His dad just sighs, tired, like here we go again. And then Albert puts it back together. It boots up. It works. Almost like he's proving something, not just to them, but to the world. I can control the thing everyone else is afraid of. By 12, he's writing his first lines of code. Little programs, simple stuff, anything that makes the machine do work for you. By 14, he's inside the school's computer system. Not to fix his own grades either. He doesn't even care about school like that. He changes grades for other kids. And every time an F turns into a B, every time a transcript gets quietly rewritten, Albert feels it. That soft whisper of power. Kids start paying him. $20 here, $50 there. And what they're really buying isn't a grade. They're buying a secret door. Teachers notice something's off. Suddenly kids who never did homework are passing tests. They search for cheat sheets, stolen answer keys, copied papers. But they don't think to check the computers. Back then, most of them don't really understand computers. Albert does. In class, he's quiet, sits in the back. Just another kid who blends in. Out in the hallway, he's not special. But in those blinking lines of text, he's the one making the rules. And that feeling is dangerous because it teaches a kid something he should never learn too early. I don't need anybody. I just need a keyboard. Then one day, late at night, that dial-up modem sound fills the dark room. And Albert realizes there's a whole world out there. People using aliases, talking in codes, trading secrets. A place where every system has a crack if you know where to look. And he knows right away this is the real game. By the year 2000, the internet is blowing up like a fever. People are buying books, ordering clothes, booking flights, getting dinner delivered, all with a couple clicks. And for the first time, millions of regular folks are typing their credit card numbers into a blank box on a screen with this very human kind of trust. Like, someone built this system to keep me safe. Albert sees something else. To him, every purchase isn't a purchase. It's a stream of data. Name, address, expiration date, security code. It moves through cables, sits on servers, and way too often it's protected by nothing but habit and wishful thinking. Before the internet, thieves had to pick pockets, dig through trash, copy numbers one at a time. One card, one chance. Now, one weak spot can open the door to thousands in a single night. And just like everything else online, the black market evolves. It's not a couple reckless guys trading in the shadows anymore. It becomes a pipeline with roles. One person breaks in, quietly, like they're working a lock. Another person buys and sells the data, knows which cards are still live, which ones are already burned, prices it like it's fruit at a market. And then there are the people who turn invisible numbers into real cash. ATM withdrawals, shopping sprees, shipping goods out, cleaning the trail. Each link knows just enough to do their job. Just enough not to see the other faces. Just enough to tell themselves, I'm only a small part of this. But the underground has a problem it can't escape: trust. Everybody claims they've got the good stuff. Everybody promises delivery. Money gets sent, the seller disappears. Scammers scamming scammers. And out of that chaos, something shows up that feels weirdly familiar to anyone who's ever shopped online. A place with rules, with checks, with a middleman who holds the money until the buyer confirms the goods. That place is ShadowCrew, a digital marketplace for criminals, run with the cold efficiency of a real business. Sellers have to prove quality. Buyers leave reviews, disputes get settled, and when it works, the money moves smooth and steady. Albert gets in early. He builds a reputation the way people always do online. He replies fast. He delivers clean. He sounds confident. He doesn't have to be loud. He just has to be reliable. Slowly, he climbs. From a nobody to a coordinator, to a moderator. He knows who's selling, who's buying, who's legit, who's setting traps. He learns how to control the door. Who gets in, who gets shut out. And as ShadowCrew grows into thousands of members around the world, Albert rises with it, like he's sitting at the center of an invisible map. He's only 22. No diploma, no degree, no real job path. But in that world, he has something most people spend their whole lives chasing: respect, fear, and the most dangerous feeling of all. That if you're in the right place at the right time, you can control other people's lives with a few lines on a screen. But the higher you climb, the more eyes you attract. And in the dark, the people hunting cybercrime start seeing the same name again and again. Supazi. 2 days after the raid, Albert's sitting in an interview room inside the federal building in Miami. The fluorescent lights are harsh and tired, buzzing like they've been on for years, and no one ever plans to turn them off. There's a metal table bolted to the floor, a two-way mirror on the wall, the kind where someone can watch you, but you can't watch them. Across from him is a Secret Service agent who's been tracking ShadowCrew for months. And he's not yelling. He's not preaching. He just looks at Albert, calm and steady, like he's weighing one decision that matters. Albert is 22. First arrest. Barely even got the chance to live a normal life. But he understands something most people don't. In cases like this, they don't just want one guy. They want the whole machine. You shut down a forum today, another one pops up tomorrow. Arrest one moderator and nothing really changes, unless you've got someone who can open the door from the inside. The agent starts laying it out. The charges. The time. The kind of sentence where your 20s and 30s disappear, and you walk out older than you ever pictured. He doesn't have to threaten Albert. He just paints the picture clearly. Albert listens. His heart is pounding, but his face stays flat. Inside, there's fear, sure, but there's also that old feeling from when he was a kid, like he's always had to prove he's smarter than the world around him. And in that moment, he spots a way out. Not a way out through regret. A way out through leverage. He starts talking. Screen names. Real names. Server locations. How the marketplace works. The channels they use that law enforcement hasn't cracked yet. He talks like a guy putting his most valuable asset on the table. And then he offers something bigger. Let me go back in. Let me sit inside it. I'll help you map every link, every key player, every leader. I'll walk you right up to the door. A deal gets placed in front of him. Reduced time. Protected identity. A steady paycheck. Expenses covered. A new role that, on paper, sounds like redemption. Albert nods, but no one in that room can see what's forming behind his eyes. The feeling of being shielded. The feeling of being trusted. And the feeling that from this point on, he can move between two worlds, and nobody will be able to touch him. October 2004, Secret Service Headquarters, Washington, D.C. 14 months of surveillance. Hundreds of hours of chat logs. Names stitched together from screen handles and IP addresses. All of it finally turns into something real, something you can actually execute. They call it Operation Firewall. A case like this is simple in one way. If it fails, everything evaporates. The suspects scatter, the network reshapes, and you're back at zero. But if it works, it becomes the kind of win people talk about for years. Then the night comes. Same moment, different countries, different time zones, doors start coming off hinges. Some guys get yanked out of bed before they even understand what's happening. Others are halfway through dinner, and suddenly they're in handcuffs in front of their families. You hear boots on stairs, short commands, the hard click of metal locking shut. By morning, 28 people are in custody. A criminal infrastructure that felt untouchable just disappears from the internet, like someone pulled the plug on an entire world. Back in the command room, agents look at each other and finally exhale. That deep, shaky kind of relief, like you just made it through a storm. They believe they stopped something dangerous. They believe they protected millions of strangers who will never know how close they were to getting burned. And in that story, Albert is the special character. The star informant, the guy who got them inside. The guy who helped them set the trap in the right place at the right time. A person who used to be on the other side, now getting called a hero. But down in Miami, in his apartment, Albert flips on the TV. He watches the headlines crawl across the screen. The biggest takedown. ShadowCrew taken down. He's got a beer in his hand. He watches for a long moment, and then he smiles. Not because justice won. Not because he feels guilty. He's smiling because the door just closed on everyone who could compete with him. Everyone who knew too much about how he worked. They're getting marched away in cuffs, and he's still free. Still getting paid. Still getting trusted. And while the whole system is celebrating, Albert quietly starts building something new. Smaller, cleaner, more careful, and a whole lot more dangerous. By 2005, America is shopping like never before. Malls are bright, loud, and packed. You've got that steady beep of barcode scanners, paper bags crinkling, cashiers saying, "Sorry, can you swipe it again?" People are standing in line after work with discount fines in their hands and real life on their minds. Rent, kids, dinner, bills. Nobody is thinking about what's invisible. The data moving under the tile floor and behind the register. That network where every swipe is a little flash, leaving behind a name, a number, an expiration date, and a quiet promise that everything's safe. Albert doesn't see those numbers like money. He sees them like a current, a flow. And he goes where people are least suspicious. The parking lot. A normal car. A normal laptop. A guy who looks like he's just waiting on someone. But in Albert's head, it's a map. Stores, systems, the path between the checkout counter and whatever sits behind it. He isn't grabbing purses. He isn't kicking in doors. He's leaving something behind that just sits there and listens. Every time a customer signs their name, every time an employee smiles and makes small talk, the data moves like water, and Albert just has to sit still and let it pass. At first, it's basically practice. A few stores, a few states, a few weeks. But once he sees it works, he stops thinking small. He looks up at a name that sounds almost boring. TJX, TJ Maxx, Marshalls, Home Goods, places people go to find a deal and give themselves a tiny win on a random Tuesday. Millions of transactions a day, each one a heartbeat in the economy. And the real prize isn't one store. It's the hub behind it, the place where everything funnels back. The stores are doors. The data center is the vault. Albert is patient like a hunter. He tries different doors, finds the weakest link, moves slow enough not to make noise. And eventually, he touches the core. Years of transaction records. Years of information sitting there like a warehouse nobody bothered to lock. Because it was convenient, because nobody imagined it could turn into a wound. He takes it in small batches, quietly, carefully, enough that no one panics, enough that the numbers can disappear while life stays normal. Above ground, people are still laughing, loading paper bags into their trunks, having no idea what just got taken from them. And once he tastes the scale of TJX, he doesn't want to go back to smaller targets. In 2007, he turns his attention to Heartland, a massive payment processor sitting behind hundreds of thousands of businesses. The little diner off the highway, the late-night gas station, the corner store run by an immigrant family. They don't know what Heartland is. They don't need to. They just trust the card reader on the counter. They trust that a swipe is a normal moment in a normal day. And that simple trust is what makes this story hurt. Because when that data gets quietly collected month after month, it's not just numbers getting stolen. It's the midnight calls from banks. The weird charges that pop up after you filled your tank. The paycheck that gets tied up. The fear that hits your stomach when you realize someone out there has your name in their hands. In the dark, the data keeps flowing. Night after night, like steady rain no one looks up to notice. And by the time anyone finally sees what's happening, the number isn't a few million, it's hundreds of millions. Altogether, around 160 million cards. A cold number, But behind it are millions of small lives getting shaken. And the wildest part is, through all of it, Albert still shows up on time to meetings with the Secret Service. Still nods along. Still talks about threats like he's on their side. For him, it's a trophy. For everyone else, it's a slow, invisible panic that lasts for years. March 2008, Secret Service Field Office in San Diego. An agent named Steve Heyman is going through financial records for a completely different case. It's the kind of work that feels like chewing sand. Dry paperwork, cold numbers, long wire transfers that look meaningless after a while, until one name keeps popping up. Albert Gonzalez, Miami. Heyman pauses. Because in cybercrime circles, everybody knows that name. Star Informant. Operation Firewall Hero. The guy people point to when they want proof that the system can turn someone. That even a hacker can be brought to the good side. But numbers don't care about stories. And they don't care about reputations. An informant's paycheck doesn't buy an ocean view condo. It doesn't cover nights where money gets tossed around like it's nothing. It doesn't explain constant travel. It definitely doesn't explain money moving overseas. And when Heyman realizes that, he feels this cold line run up his spine. Not fear, more like that sick feeling you get when you realize you've been played. Because if he's right, it doesn't just mean one guy is dirty. It means the agency built years of wins on a lie. So Heyman digs in. One invoice, one contact, one intersection where money meets a person. A shadow starts forming out in Eastern Europe. A broker gets arrested. And in the chatter around that broker, there are hints of a trusted partner based in Miami. Piece by piece, it starts snapping into place, almost too perfectly, like the truth has been sitting there the whole time, waiting for someone with the guts to stare at it. Heyman takes it up the chain. The first reaction is silence, then defensiveness, because Albert isn't just a suspect. Albert is their guy. Going after him means admitting they got fooled. But Heyman doesn't let it go. He pushes for access to more records. Phone logs, travel history, online activity. And the picture comes into focus slowly and brutally. While he was still showing up to meetings, still nodding along, still talking about threats like he was on the team, Albert was living two lives at the same time. One life to be trusted, and one life to take everything. By May 2008, the Secret Service opens a formal investigation. This time, the target isn't a forum or some faceless group online. This time, the target is the person they've been protecting. 6 a.m. Miami, May 7th, 2008. Albert wakes up to pounding on the door hard. Fast. Familiar in a way that makes your stomach drop. Some sounds only have to happen once for your body to remember them forever. 5 years earlier, in that motel room, the door blew in and Albert still had room to bargain his way into a deal. This time, there's no deal waiting on the other side. The door opens and agents in body armor flood the apartment like a wave. Weapons up, short commands, cold voices. And the cruelest part is who they are. These are the same people who shook Albert's hand. The same people who cut his checks. The same people who trusted him. Now they're looking at him like he's a stain they can't scrub off. Albert freezes for a second, like someone yanked him out of a dream. And then everything moves too fast. Hands grab him. Cuffs snap shut. Metal bites into his wrists. And the double life he's been selling everyone suddenly has nowhere left to hide. Inside the apartment, the evidence is everywhere. Laptops, hard drives, neatly organized folders of stolen data, arranged like it's just another job. In the closet, duffel bags stuffed with cash. Under the floor, more cash, $1 million and then more. Money stops being a prize, it becomes proof. Every bill is a silent confession for every long night that data flowed through his hands. But the hardest punch lands in a place nobody expects. His parents' house. A simple backyard. They remember a strange moment, their son showing up with a barrel, acting nervous, asking them to bury it near the fence. And they did it, because he's their kid, because families carry quiet secrets without asking too many questions. When the agents dig it up, the dirt breaks open, and there it is. A block of cash, sealed tight, like pirate treasure. Albert's mother starts crying, not because of the money, but because in that moment she understands her son has been living a life she could never reach. Albert gets walked out. Footsteps echo down the hallway. Outside, the Miami sun is bright like any other day. People are going to work, swiping cards for coffee, living normal lives. The only difference is this. The man who's been living between two worlds just got pulled all the way to one side. And on that side, There's no way back. March 2010, a courtroom in Boston. Albert stands in front of the judge in an orange jumpsuit, wrists chained. No motel room anymore. No chat screens. No late nights where he could pretend he was invisible. Just a real person, looking worn down, facing a damage report so huge it almost doesn't sound like real life. Tens of millions of cards. Hundreds of millions in losses. Years of trust snapped in half. And what makes this story heavy isn't just the numbers. It's the opportunity. Albert actually got handed a clean exit. A legal paycheck. A real role. A door that almost never opens for someone who's already crossed the line. He could have rebuilt his life. He could have been the guy who used his talent to stop the next wave, but he didn't choose that road. Maybe because control feels sweeter than peace. Maybe because once you get used to the dark, the light starts to feel cramped, and the price of living a double life always gets paid the same way. With time. A long sentence. Your best years slipping through your fingers like sand, and you don't get to pick them back up. For the rest of us, the hardest lesson is this. The biggest danger doesn't always come from someone outside the door. Sometimes it comes from the person you invited in, the person you handed keys to, the person you decided to trust. Trust is what keeps society moving. It's also what gets exploited the fastest. If this story stuck with you, stay here with Sins and Lessons. And I want to ask you something straight. If you were the one responsible, would you use an insider to take down the whole network? Or would you refuse, even if it meant the hunt drags on for years longer?